Hansen gets poked hard by you-know-who. Kachuk.
McDavid scores! Game winner! Series winner!
Oh, he scored! Oh, Steve Smith in attempting to get it out of his own zone, put it in the net.
Cam Talbot and Mike Smith, they're going to go at center ice. This is the Battle of Alberta we've been waiting for 3 decades!
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Fuel and Fire podcast. This is the Win Column Sports' Battle of Alberta podcast. My name is Faiz. I'm a contributor with the Oil Rig. That's the Oilers blog. And with me today, we have a couple new faces. My usual co-host, Josh, is not here today. He said he has legitimate reasons, but let's be honest, he knows he lost a bet we made. And so he does not want to come on and eat peppers because he's going to try and push that off, I think, as much as possible. But luckily, we have some more than capable people here today. We got Sean Laycock, also from the Oil Rig, and Alex Russo, who is here taking Josh's place repping the Win column. So I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
Sure thing. Yeah. So I'm Sean. I've been a writer for the Oil Rig for a couple of years now, and I also deal with the content side of things as well, helping schedule and plan out what goes out on the blog.
Yeah, and I'm Alex. I'm a contributor for the Win column. Been writing with them for about a year now, or just over a year. So definitely been fun. I'm happy to be here. Should be a good time. I'm outnumbered today, though.
Yeah, we got the power play.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly. Yeah.
So,
and for the Oilers, speaking of the power play, they're finally kicking it up a notch, and we're getting back to where we want to be there. It's been a good 5 games, I'd say, for the Oilers. And I know me and Sean are happy. Alex, I don't know how you feel about that.
it was nice in October when they were losing a little bit more. But I mean, to me, there was no doubt in my mind that at some point with the roster they have that they were going to pick it up. So yeah, it wasn't shocking. It's like last year, right? It's like they started off so poorly, and next thing you know, they're in the Cup final. So I don't know if it'll be Cup final repeat. Hopefully not. But yeah, I mean, not a shocker.
I mean, and your Flames, I mean, I know there was a bit of a, like, you can catch me up as well, because I know there was a bit of a crisis going on for a little bit there over in Cowtown.
I wouldn't necessarily maybe call it a crisis. I mean, they lost 4 straight on the road. I think you and Josh might have gotten over that. But I don't know. I think for me, like, I've always been someone who can't actively cheer against them come the actual game. But like after, if they lose, it is what it is. I think a lot of us, I think, are on the team tank side of things. So when they win, it's nice. But, like when they lost to Tampa the other night, when they got stomped, it was like, okay, well, the losing's beginning. So we need that. We still need that top 10 pick this year. I mean, all the World Junior stuff's happening. You see all these like younger guys that are going to be draft eligibles. And even the guys that were cut, like I've been seeing Misa highlights for pretty much the last week or two since they announced that he wasn't going. It's like, yeah, I mean, that kid would look pretty good, down the middle with like a Coronado and a Zeri or a Peltier. So I would love if they were really good, but I mean, we're kind of in the area now where, okay, if they're bad, it is what it is. It's fine. Unfortunately, Brad Treliving gave away our picks. I think it would be more of a crisis if he lost their pick and didn't make the playoffs. So I don't think they're going to be a playoff team. I've watched them enough. I've watched every game this year, and I still go when it's not Wolf and net, they're not a playoff team. And last night, he looked great. I don't think the team necessarily looked amazing. I thought the Coronado, Backlund, Coleman line was really, really good. But outside of that, you're not going to win anything with Joel Hanley in your top 4. He was playing with Uyghur last night. I was like, oh, not great. But like I said, it is fun when they win. Like I said, I don't actively cheer against them. So I'm just kind of along for the ride, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you guys, though, like after that losing streak, it's just 1-1, like win 1, lose 1. And also, okay, what is the deal with the whole pick thing? I keep reading about it, but I can't understand it. Like,
I'll dummy it down. I'll dummy it down for you guys because at least this year, it's very, very simple. If the Flames pick lands this year between 1 and 10, they keep their pick. And Montreal will get Florida's 2025 first-round pick. If Calgary's pick is anywhere between 11 and 32, Montreal gets the better of the Flames or Panthers pick, which, let's be honest, the Flames pick is going to be worse than the Panthers unless the Panthers have some kind of monumental collapse and somehow finish worse than the Flames, which, let's be honest, is not happening. Like I said, defending cup champs, they're not falling that far down. So it's really like, if you don't finish bottom 10, you're kind of screwed. I've said it though, kind of all year, that if it does come to a point where it's like, okay, like they might make the playoffs, I hope they do in that case. If like they're kind of in that mushy middle, I would hope they make it. I'd rather lose the pick and still get a round of hockey. Let's be honest, like they'll probably get stomped by whoever they played in the first round. Like, unless it's, I don't know, I'm trying to think of teams off the top of my head. Like Colorado would kill them. Edmonton would probably kill them. Dallas, they always seem to play Dallas really well, but then again, Dallas destroyed them last week. So I don't know. It would have to be, everything would have to go right, I think, for them to win a series. Like Dustin Wolf plays out of his mind, kind of like Ottinger did in 2022. Obviously, they didn't win that series against the Flames, but like it's that kind of situation where Dallas really wasn't that good that year, and the Flames were on paper, on the ice, were so far away the better team. Like I still stand to this day that series should have been over in like 5, rather than it going to 7 and giving me a heart attack and taking 30 years off my life because Ottinger decided to play out of his mind. But even if they get there, it would be cool if they won around. But I think it was James, who's a writer for the Win column. Everyone probably knows James. He's always talking about how their schedule in March is extremely difficult, and it's right around the deadline. Depending on where they are, I don't know who they're going to be selling off, because they're really only big ticket UFAs would have been Kuzmenko, who has 1 goal, and Mantha, who's done for the year. So unless there's another trade in the works where maybe it's Rasmus Anderson going out the door, maybe the wheels start to fall off by then, but it's not going to be like last year where between February and March, like 4 huge pieces of the team were moved out. Lindholm, Hanifin, Tanev, Zadorov was obviously moved earlier, but you get my drift. I don't know. We'll see. That's obviously a while from now. So
Yeah, so I guess with that, like, I mean, if you're the Flame, like you said, like if it's getting to the deadline and if the team's in the mushy middle already, you kind of just want to push for that playoff spot. I mean, as an Oilers fan, the greatest thing would be you guys get that 11th pick, and then the Oilers win the cup, and Florida's 31st. They lose to us. That would be
tough. That'd be tough.
Well, that would basically do exactly what the Flames do pretty much every season, where they're consistently mediocre. Where they're good enough to just kind of sneak near a playoff spot, but they're never bad enough to get a really good draft pick. And then they just like exist in this perpetual state of mediocrity.
It's like 22-23. It was like, I don't think they were in a playoff spot like all year outside of like the first. They started off like 5-0-1 or 5-1 that year, and then they went on like a 7-game slide like right after they started off that well, and I don't think they got back into a playoff spot at all for the rest of the year. And then it came down to those last 3 games, and we all remember the Nick Ritchie and the shootout against the Predators in a must-win, and then they ended up picking 16th that year. And yeah, it would have been nice that year, especially in 23, because the draft was so good. We all can say what we want. There were some good players on the board, and they went with Honzik, who he's been playing better, to his credit. He's been playing a lot better as of late in the AHL, and maybe he's something, but man, like Gabe Perreault, that kid would look pretty good in red.
Yeah, the Flames might be in that mushy middle still. Luckily for Oilers fans, we seem to be stepping out of that. Obviously, a 5-game win streak really helps go from, I think we were maybe in the second wildcard spot at our last episode, to within striking distance of the division. So I know Sean and I are pretty happy about that. I guess I shouldn't speak for you, Sean, but I'm going to assume you're pretty.
Definitely very happy. I mean, they're either the second or the third hottest team in the league over the last 10 games. They are tied with the Kings 8-2-0 in the last 10 games, and the Capitals are 8-1-1 in the last 10. But Edmonton's got the 5-game win streak. And this is exactly what we expected would happen with the team. I think most of Oil Country was kind of passively doomsdaying earlier in the season when it was going bad. We weren't particularly concerned because we saw what happened last season, and it's like, yeah, I'll be fine. And now you're seeing, as the team's PDO fortune changes, as Skinner finds his game again in net and starts making the saves that they need, suddenly, like, this team is looking fairly unbeatable. You've got everybody clicking on every single cylinder that they need to. You've got Darnell Nurse playing the best hockey of his career. Like, huge shout out to him since he got back from that injury. He's been like the best he has ever been. Draisaitl looks like he wants the Hart and the Selke and the Rocket Richard, and maybe he wants the Art Ross too. Let him have them all. Just give him every single award.
Exactly.
And
give him the Norris.
Yeah, give him the Norris too. Why not? But like you said, they're within striking distance of the division lead, and they just took down the Golden Knights yesterday as we're recording this, and that was, a fairly convincing win over them as well, aside from a 2-minute span in the third period or whatever. So 3 points back of the division lead, and suddenly the team looks fine. They look like the team that we knew through the end of last season. They look like the team that won 16 straight games last season.
Totally. I mean, yeah, like last night, I think the last 2 games, you got Minnesota and Vegas, and like you said, they just completely dominated them.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely good to see. And, this is an Oilers team, I feel like, generally speaking, come the holidays, generally is not great. Like, from my recollections over the last little while, December, January are always a bit rough at times. So it's good to see them clicking. And I mean, I love seeing Zach Hyman scoring 5 goals in 5 games since his return. Outside of the fact that, he saved me from losing a bet and whatnot. But, I think there might be some truth to the whole, he got snubbed from the Team Canada roster, and same with Skinner. I think, they might say they don't really care that much for a meaningless tournament like that, but I could see it. These are proud guys, and so maybe that is the best thing that happened for the Oilers.
Yeah, for sure. And, like you said, they handily beat the Wild and the Golden Knights in back-to-back games. And one of the best parts about that is looking at who scored. When you have basically every single goal is scored by a different player, and you're seeing the depth on the roster. You mentioned Skinner in the snub from the Four Nations team, and you see him go and put up these 2 incredible games, or the one incredible game against the Golden Knights anyways, and the games prior to the Wild that he was looking great. And now it's like, okay, well, was it Montembeault made the team over Skinner? That's looking like it could have been the wrong decision for Team Canada there.
Yeah, I mean, I think regardless, Skinner probably wasn't in the hunt. I think they're going to give the reins to Binnington personally, but yeah, it's great to see the whole team firing on all cylinders right now. And we have a segment called Dig In right now, and it seems like they've done that.
Dig in right now!
Last time on this segment, I picked Jeff Skinner, and Josh had picked Andrei Kuzmenko. I mean, I'll say Skinner, he's dug in a little bit for sure. He's got 4 points in his last 5 games, 5 in his last 7. So even he's trying to turn around. I know he was a bit of a whipping boy for a while. So that's good to see. But, we have this segment here. And so, Sean, I'm going to let you, as the new guy here, to pick someone to dig in. Who do you think actually needs to step up here?
Yeah, so, I mean, it's hard, like you said, when everybody is kind of firing on all cylinders, like who needs to do more. But one player that stands out to me in that regard is going to be Adam Henrique. This is going to be Adam Henrique at even strength, because obviously him being on the penalty kill is working, because the Oilers' penalty kill has been first in the league since the middle of November. But Adam Henrique in general, it's hard to notice him when he's playing. He hasn't been very visible during the games, especially at even strength, especially offensively. He's got 2 assists in his last 6 games. That's it. For someone, he's the third line center, but you want to see a little bit more dynamic play from him. You want to see a little bit more scoring potential, a little bit more shooting. What's he got? 9 shots in his last 6 games. So he's getting the puck on net, but he's not really capitalizing on a whole lot. And you just want to see a little bit more from him in the depth, especially as the players beside him with Skinner and Connor Brown, especially as they start heating up and Henrique isn't. You want to see a little bit more from their center.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. And I mean, yeah, Skinner at least brings something on the power play a little bit. Brown is just a beast on the penalty kill as well. So yeah, definitely I can see that being the guy who needs to dig in, even if it's just a little bit here.
Yeah, just a little bit, just at even strength, just to help contribute to the depth scoring that they need.
Yeah. And Alex, so I know you didn't pick Kuzmenko, but I don't know what your thoughts are on how he's done since that.
He hasn't been noticeable, unfortunately. He's down with a lower body injury right now. It's been a tough go for him. It's crazy because I watch him play and there's a ton of skill there. It's just nothing's gone right for him. He hasn't scored since October. I want to say it was the 3rd or 4th game of the season. He scored on a power play tip-in, and he just hasn't been the player he was when he came over from Vancouver a year ago. It's just been a rough go. I don't know if it's him. I don't know if it's the system Huska's been running. It's just nothing's worked for him. And it's kind of crappy because he looked really, really strong in the preseason alongside Kadri. And him, Pospisil, and Naz were a super good line to end the year a year ago. Yeah, it was a guy that you were really, really hoping would play well enough to garner a nice package at the deadline. Because like I said before, he is an unrestricted free agent. But I don't even know if anybody's going to be willing to pay any assets for him. I personally think right now he's playing for an NHL job. This might be a guy that ends up in Russia next year with the way it's gone. I think some team will take a stab at him. Man, I'm happy they didn't extend him. Speaking of players that they did extend, the guy I chose for needing to dig in, Yegor Sharangovich. Pointless in his last 5. He only has 8 points on the year in 24 games, 6 of them goals, 2 assists. Not nearly as impactful as he was a season ago. He started the year with an injury, and it took him some time to kind of get going. And he went on a nice little run right as they had that 4-game win streak at home, scored some goals, and he just hasn't been nearly the same since. I think there was a lot of us that were saying, okay, don't give this guy an extension, just wait out a year. Unfortunately, they gave him that 5-year, 5 times 5.75, and unfortunately, it doesn't look good. He just has not been where he was a year ago. Like, he's not shooting the puck nearly as much, and even last year, his underlying numbers weren't very good. He shot pretty high, his percentage-wise. He shot pretty high. He was in good spots a lot of the time, but, he's only on pace for 25 points this year. And for a guy that you just extended to a long-term deal, like, it's not great. And he's very, very streaky, so maybe at some point he picks it up. I think not only this year, but beyond, they need this guy to be at least 20 goals, 50 points to justify that extension at minimum. I think when Conroy signed that guy, he was Conroy's first trade, right? And they got flamed for that move. It was the Toffoli trade. And to his credit, he had a good year last year. And maybe that's why Conroy's kind of gatekeeping him a little bit, because he's pretty proud of that first move, and he didn't just want to see him walk like Hanifin, or not walk, but want out like Hanifin and Kachuk, and Tanev and Zadorov, like those guys, and Markstrom. You can even go back and say Johnny Gaudreau. Maybe that's why he was kind of gatekeeping him a little bit. But they need him to be so much better, because when he's on, like, that guy can rip the puck. But unfortunately, he's just not shooting right now. Just not like, I didn't even notice him last night. Like I said, he's pointless his last 5. Hasn't necessarily been great.
He is a younger guy anyway, though, right? So this isn't the 30-year-old contract that maybe is really going to age poorly, right?
No, he's not necessarily young. Like, he's 26, turning 27 in June. So he's not like this guy who's developing. He's kind of is what he is, right? So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how the rest of his year go. Hopefully, the next time you guys speak, he'll be on pace for more than 25 points.
It worked for me and Hyman, so maybe it'll work for you too.
Yeah, Sharangovich doesn't have a Connor McDavid he's playing with. So, but Connor Zari's pretty good. They paired him with Zary last night, and I thought Zary's been awesome. Kid is so good. Very excited for him.
If there's one thing we've learned, it's if you want your kid to be good in the NHL, name him Connor. So
clearly,
for anyone out there who's having kids coming up soon, that's the name. That's the name. I'll give you that for free.
Right.
I think before this, you had asked us, does the dig in person have to be a player? Can it be someone else? Because I know you wrote an article on the Win column evaluating Ryan Huska's system and player development. It's got some engagement, I'll say that. So do you want to tell us what's in there and how you're feeling about all that?
Yeah, I could probably speak on this for hours, but I'll try and keep it short. Basically, it kind of came to me, I think it was before Thursday night's game against Tampa, because basically it came down that Vladar was getting the start. He was getting like his 3rd straight start, and or second straight start, and that Jacob Pelche was sitting as a scratch. I will be completely honest. I haven't loved Ryan Huska as a coach since he took over. He's very much a placeholder coach. Like, they were going from a guy who was super systematic, super strict on certain things in Daryl Sutter. And you could say what you want about Daryl, but he would always get everything out of his players and his teams. You can say what you want about the analytics. All of his teams were always super strong in terms of their on-ice impacts and their underlyings. Always super strong. That 22-23 Flames team, very strong analytically, but they just weren't as talented as, like the year prior team that obviously had like Gaudreau and Chuck and those guys, right? When Huska's kind of come in, like I don't even know what he's trying to do on a nightly basis. The lines change every single night. They change halfway through the game. Like, Daryl caught a lot of flack for a line blender, but like, at least when he got them in a groove, they stayed. Like, the lines are changing every night. The system doesn't work for this team. And I question what he's been doing with the allocation of starts between Dan Vladar and Dustin Wolf. I'll start there because I think that's what I was probably the most heated on. Basically, the start of the year, it was Vladar, Wolf, Vladar, Wolf. It was consistent. They weren't doing anything different. The first time they made a change to that, Dan Vladar got a shutout against the New Jersey Devils. They went with Vladar to the next game. Okay, fair enough. You have a goalie, you just got a shutout, ride the hot hand. And then Wolf got his first career shutout like a couple weeks later. Or no, sorry. It was during that 4-game win streak at home. They beat LA, Minnesota, I want to say it was Nashville. They beat someone else in there, but they had their 4-game win streak at home. And Wolf started 3 of the 4, and he was fantastic. Then it's come to a point where I think Wolf had a couple bad games. There was a game against Dallas a couple weeks ago. Forget who they played that he got shelled a little bit. He got shelled in a couple games. Growing pains of a goalie, it's fine. But Vladar got rinsed against. They won against Nashville, but he wasn't very good. And then they went back to him against Tampa. And I'm like, why are we screwing around with this when you've got this 23-year-old kid who quite literally could be in the Vezina conversation, maybe not winning it, but you could put him in the conversation. And he's definitely up there as a Calder favorite. Why aren't we giving this kid more run? Because he's been so good. He's the only reason the Flames have as many wins on the year as they do, is because he's been fantastic. And they went back to Vladar, and it was like, why? He's a sub 900 on the year. I think he's sitting at an 897. He just hasn't been very good. Wolf is very clear the best goalie on the team. Play him more. Use him. He's your guy of the future. Use him. The other part of it was Jacob Pelche. We all know the story between him and Daryl. I think it's very well documented. There was the first game that he played. Oh, what number is he? Yada, yada, yada. But then Pelche got a pretty substantial run in the Flames lineup, up in the lineup. He played alongside Huberdeau and Kadri for a good, I think it was almost 20 games that he was in that top 6, scored his first NHL goal on that line in Buffalo. And then down the stretch, Daryl kind of went, okay, like, I want to play my vets because we're trying to make a playoff run. I didn't love that, but it is what it is. Last year, he gets injured, derailed his season, killed his season. Comes back, and quite literally 2 games after he comes back, Trouba hits him, he's on the shelf again. And he just wasn't the same player that we had saw previously in the previous year, that kind of dog mentality, in on everything, just being an absolute hound out there. He wasn't that same player. He did look like he was playing a little bit, I won't say scared, but he didn't have that same mentality, right? And he was kind of just playing on the 4th line, and then he got scratched for a few games, and then they sent him down. You know what? I can live with that. That's fine. When it's come to this year, I know he didn't earn his spot out of camp, and I completely understand that. He went down to the AHL and dominated. Him, Walker Duer, and Rory Cairns have been killing in the AHL. He gets his recall, and for whatever reason, it's Walker Duer on the 3rd line instead of Pelche. Like, and then he gets like, I think there was that game against Nashville. He had an assist. I think he had the best on-ice impacts on the team, but he only played 5 minutes. And it's like, what are we doing? Like, why are we doing this? And then the game against Tampa, he comes out in favor of Ryan Lomberg. I know the fan base and I know the team loves Lomberg, but what I said in my article, what I was trying to drive home is the team is not good. We know this. The team is not very good. Huska's goal should be trying to develop these players into long-term success projects for the team. I don't understand why he's prioritizing players like Kevin Rooney, Ryan Lomberg, even Walker Duer to an extent, over a kid like Jacob Pelche, who was a first-round pick for your hockey team 5 years ago? Why play him on the fourth line? Why are we hindering this kid? You want to know if he's a player in the NHL? Use him, please. Last night, he played with Zary and Sharon Govich. Looked great. He looked great. The kid can move. He's so fast. He's tenacious on the forecheck. He's going to be one of those guys. Maybe he's not a 60-point scorer. At his peak, I can see him being a 20-20 guy who's just a menace out there. He's going to be on you no matter what. He's going to be great in the room. He was a captain in junior. I want to say he wore a letter on the World Junior team. Maybe not, but he was a leader with that team. Huska really has to start prioritizing those things over the vets of the team. Again, I love Ryan Lomberg. I think he's a great, great dude. I don't think he's a player that needs to be in the lineup every night. Kevin Rooney definitely doesn't need to be in the lineup every night. Surely you can find somebody to move down to the middle on that line. Like, I'm sure you can just plug somebody in at center and you can run a top nine that has Pelche in it. One thing I didn't mention in that article was, look how many injuries it took just for them to get Pelche, even to an extent, Matt Coronado. Coronado started the year as a 13th forward on the team. And it took Anthony Mantha getting ACL surgery for him to finally get a full-time position on this team. And he's literally been one of the team's best skaters since coming back up. He's been awesome. Pelche, it took, you could say the Mantha injury, Kirkland getting injured. It took Ryan Lomberg having to stay home on the road trip because his wife was expecting. It's taken all of these different aspects for these younger kids to get into the lineup when Craig Conroy has been so insistent of, we want the kids to play, we want the kids to play, we want the kids to play. It's very just, I don't know if Huskin and Conroy have the same ideal lookout on the team. But then again, Conroy did go out and sign Mantha and Lomberg when he absolutely did not need to. Didn't need those players when you already had so many wingers on the team. Like, you already had Coronado penciled in, Coleman, Huberdeau, Kuzmenko, and you only traded Mangiapane. Like, imagine they still had him, how many more wingers that they still got on the depth chart. There's a lot that I think you can unpack when it comes to Huska. Even his systems, like, he's playing like a dump and chase. Daryl caught so much flack for the way he handled the players and how he implicated his system. Daryl's the reason Huberdeau was so poor this year. Daryl's the reason. Well, he's been worse under Huska. He's on pace for 55 points this year, which matches what he had with his 1 year under Daryl. And he's not letting him push the pace. Why? I've gone over and I've watched so many clips of him in Florida. Why did Jonathan Huberdeau succeed so much with the Panthers? And especially in that 21-22 year, the Panthers let him be him. He was a defensive liability, which if you're going to score 100 points, who cares? If you're a defensive liability, that's a winger. Florida let him push the pace, make things happen, get up and down the ice. And he wasn't a Barkov merchant that year. He spent a majority of his 5v5 ice time with Sam Bennett and Anthony Duclair. Good players, not star players, right? So I think there has to be a philosophy change somewhere in the coaching staff to let their star players kind of do what they want. I will say the last few games, since they put Kadri and Huberdeau back together, they've looked a lot better. Like Huberdeau especially, I know he's only, $10.5 million, and we're happy he's on pace for 50 points and 30 goals. But he has looked better. Naz has looked a lot more engaged, which is great to see. There's got to be some kind of change, though. I don't love the way he's deploying them. They're line matching like it's game 7 of the Stanley Cup final. Like, I understand you want a coach to win, and I totally get that. If he doesn't win, his job is on the line. But I think there has to be some leeway, especially with the younger players. If, Pospisil got benched quite a few times earlier in the year for taking penalties, but Huberdeau's done it plenty of times this year. I think there was a period earlier in the year he took 3 penalties in the first, and he was out there very next shift. The vets obviously get the run. They get a longer leash than the younger kids. I don't think that should necessarily be the case. Not in a year where you're not expected of anything and that you're most likely, by the time this year is all wrapped up, a bottom 10 team. But if you want to read more, that article is out there. I think he's maybe in over his head, but I also think he's not the long-term guy. Like, I think one day, hopefully, become good again, there's probably someone else that steps in and takes over the reins as the guy who's going to lead them over the top.
Yeah, and I mean that's always the case with rebuilding teams or what have you. I mean, and I think I was kind of laughing while you're talking all this because I think Oilers fans have basically felt everything you felt before, Decade of Darkness, or even with Todd McClellan and those guys, where you're left scratching your head. But I think everyone's pretty happy with Kris Knoblauch. I know at the beginning of the year we were having some complaints too, although they weren't quite the same as yours. But Sean, I don't know, how have you felt about Knoblauch, especially since things have turned around?
Honestly, even in the tricky start to the season, I was still pretty high on Knoblauch and how he was handling it. One of the things that he does really, really well is handling his just demeanor and how he presents himself and what's going on to the team, on the bench, to the media, that he's just very calm. He's very collected. He's not giving out a whole lot of emotion or frustration. He doesn't show it. So when he's doing that, he's kind of like the leading face of the team in that regard. When he's presenting himself that way to us, the fans, we're not getting as panicked about it either. We as fans, we had been there last year when the team was awful through no fault of the coach, really. So we knew it wasn't Knoblauch or anything he was doing. We knew they were going to be running the same systems. We knew they had this basically, the same core coming back. And we knew it was just like a matter of time until things turned around. So even in the worst of the beginning of the season, when, sure, we're tossing around like, oh, is Kris Knoblauch going to be on the coaching hot seat? He never really would have been. I don't think there was any urgency to get rid of him and make a change. And now, obviously, that things have turned around, we're all pretty high on him again. I mean, I'm pretty sure his systems work extremely well for the team, that when the Oilers are on their game, they are one of the best defensive teams in the league. And this is a trend that even goes before Kris Knoblauch a little bit, that even with Jay Woodcroft, they had the same trend. I think basically as soon as Ekholm came in and solidified that defensive unit, they've been one of the best defensive teams in the league. And the way that he's kind of gotten certain parts of the roster to function better, he's vastly improved the special teams at times when everyone's kind of like working well. He did use the line blender a lot earlier in the season when he was trying to figure out the new roster and some of the players that had changed around. But for the last month or so, it's been pretty consistent. I feel like I don't know if you've noticed too many roster changes, Faiz, in that regard, but the lines have been pretty consistent.
Oh yeah, like you can actually set the lines out from game to game, and yeah, I know at the beginning of the season, my one, I don't want to say complaint, but my one thought on why there was maybe a slow start to the season was the fact that we didn't seem to have Skinner, Arvidsson, that second line playing with Draisaitl a lot. It seemed like it was back in the day of let's try and give everyone at training camp an equal chance, or it's like in a cup or bust year again, you've got all these returning players with new guys who already have the spot. I think 12 out of 13 forward spots, for instance, were spoken for. So I think my thought at that time was that was what led to a slow start, and then there was some blending, like you mentioned. But yeah, like the team, you can see the team is gelling. You can see that there's a lot of chemistry going on. And again, I will say initially when Kapanen got moved off of McDavid's wing, I was a little like, I don't know, like, that Kapanen's not he's a guy who needs to be in a good spot, and you take him off that and see. But, he and Draisaitl and Podkolzin, I mean, I think that's a crazy way that's the second line, and that is a line that Draisaitl is an MVP candidate, is leading the league in goals, and he's doing that with those guys. I think it shows how good he is and also how much chemistry comes into play. So, yeah, he's doing everything. I know also watching it when it comes to systems, the way the Oilers move the puck, especially up the ice, the breakout is so crisp lately. It's so smooth and so fast. Like this is a rush team. And I don't know if you guys heard Paul Maurice's comments actually leading up to the game that they're going to be playing. And he said after losing to Calgary, if we play like that against Edmonton, they're going to pile in 15 against us, because he says they're one of the best rush teams in the league. And he's right. So
do you think that he's going to be in the running for, if not winning, the Jack Adams this year?
I think he's got a very good chance. I mean, there's always the issue of if you're the coach on the team that's expected to be good, are you going to get it? Like, if anything, last year should have been the year he got it.
Yeah.
And he didn't.
For sure.
This year they're going to go to, like, who's Minnie's coach again now? It's
John Hines.
Like,
which is crazy.
Hines is probably
Hines or Carberry in Washington.
You can even
exactly.
throw Sheldon Keefe, I think.
Yeah.
I think he's done a really good job there.
I think Keith, that would be an interesting one, I think, because he's got the Toronto factor going to a good team as well. So he's in the running for sure, but I think it's always the coach that is a surprise that gets it, which is maybe not the best way for that to be.
It's always the coach whose team was expected to be bad ends up being pretty good.
And wasn't it like they said, like, in the last like 5 or 4 winners have all lost their jobs in the last
so it was
2 seasons of winning.
so Daryl lost his job in he won in 22. Who won in 23? I forget who won in 20. But yeah, it's like I'm pretty sure it's every coach is no longer employed with that team. And it's funny because I think out of all the winners like recently, I think the 2 guys who won for the Flames are the only 2 that just don't have an NHL job. It's Bob Hartley and Daryl Sutter. I think it's the only 2 that are not employed. So it's kind of funny.
Like the last winner who's still with his team is Rod Brendamore with the Hurricanes.
That makes sense.
The last 3, but then you've got Montgomery, Daryl Sutter. Tocchet won last year, and it seems like things aren't going super well in Vancouver for what I'm seeing. But so I'd almost wish Knoblauch doesn't win it, to be perfectly honest. So
it seems like a bit of a curse to win it. So I'd rather he finish like 4th, just outside of any publicity from it, where it's just enough that he's getting recognition for how good of a coach he's been for this team, but not enough to kind of put him in the spotlight of that.
I also don't think coaches care about that. Like, I don't know if they get bonuses or anything for that, but I can't imagine. So they're probably like, we really don't care. Like players, you need that. You need the you've got an ego, so you want to win all the stuff and show that you're the best. But even for negotiating your new contracts, I think that comes in a lot more for them than coaches. So
because a coach can really only do so much. As much of a rant that I just went on about Ryan Huska, a coach can only really do so much, but they can hinder a team quite a bit, I would say. So it is. I wanted to pose a question to you guys because I've been wondering about it since kind of last year. If Jay Woodcroft is still the coach of the Edmonton Oilers, do you think they're still in the same position that they finished last year and the position that they've put themselves in this year? Because if I remember correctly, when Woodcroft got fired, the Oilers were tops of the league in like pretty much every underlying number, and it was just kind of like their goaltending was letting them down. And it seems like that's what kind of started this year, where they were very good, number speaking, and they kind of just, their team, the goaltending maybe just wasn't up to stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that's the case. Now do the Oilers make it all the way to the Stanley Cup final with Woodcroft? That's debatable, but it's possible. But I think, I don't necessarily think it was Woodcroft's fault. And I think you talked to a lot of fans around that time, and a lot of fans were like, I don't understand this move. It just seems like a flailing by the team and the management to just throw someone under the bus. At the same time, there was complaints about Woodcroft that were legitimate. He came in trying a new system, which took a little bit of time to get under. Is Knoblauch better? It's hard to say. Woodcroft came in under the similar conditions and did the same thing Knoblauch did. So I think for me, it's just surprising that Woodcroft hasn't gotten another job. Yeah. I do think 100%. He is a smart coach, so it's very weird to me. I mean, I think he should be the front runner at some point and should get a new job. So personally, I think we're in a similar position with Woodcroft as well, but maybe Knoblauch's system works a little bit better for the way the roster is constructed defensively, especially.
Yeah, I think that's the most important point that you made there, Faiz, is that he came in and he tried that new system and it didn't work at all. The team had no idea what they were doing defensively. They were confused. They were all over the place. And sure, he did adjust and tried to revert back, but you kind of have to think that at that point, the coach has tried what he thought would work. It's not going to work. Is he the right coach for this team? Does he understand the roster he has well enough? And it seems that Knoblauch's come in, and whatever he's done, the little tweaks, the little things he's done, he's managed to take a team that doesn't have a whole lot of foot speed outside of like the top 3 players that have gotten slower with the moves they made over the offseason. And he's found them a system that they can still be one of the best rush teams, one of the best rush offensively and defensive teams now as well. When you notice how they're defending the rush, and it's quite a unique identity to have to be able to excel on the rush with less speed than you might expect.
I think that's the one thing that surprised me the most about Edmonton when I do get around to watching them is how sound they are defensively, especially during the cup run last year. You kind of look at the names on their blue line and you think, oh, it's not great. Like I also have like Ekholm and Bouchard's good, but maybe not the best defensively. And, Nurse has always had his issues. But unfortunately, as a Flame fan, I've always kind of been the believer of if Edmonton is able just to get league average goaltending, man, they can win a cup every year. Just because because they can score. Like, that's not a question. They could put the puck in the back of the net with ease. Like, obviously, you got two of the best players on the planet, and you have a pretty decent supporting cast. Probably could be, like, I wonder if they go out and they try to add some guys, because I think it could be a little bit better, just because I know Skinner and Arvidsson maybe haven't been amazing as people thought. But if they just get, like, if Skinner goes in the playoffs, he's 9-10, I mean, who's realistically beating them?
Yeah. Well, interestingly,
like, getting goaltending
last season in the playoffs, that last round against Florida, they couldn't score. That's kind of what did them in those first couple of games. They couldn't score. They were getting good goaltending, but it was like the one mistake a game they make ends up in the back of the net, and they couldn't score.
Like you mentioned, the goaltending needing to be like above 900, for instance. And when it comes to Skinner stats, like I'm looking at it now, he's had 2 games of, like, where he had above 900 save percentage that he lost, and they were both against Vegas. And he had an overtime loss above 900, and that's against Carolina. But otherwise, every time he's above 900, the Oilers win. And like the card we've all seen, he's been doing pretty good, and it's the same kind of thing. He's got one loss where he put above 900. Otherwise, every time he's been in above 900, they win. So giving them that, and this is a team that's almost unstoppable.
Mm-hmm.
And how good would they be with Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg?
I mean, listen, you know what? When it comes to it, Ty Emberson has been quietly very good once he got moved down to the third pair. Obviously, having Kulak playing the best hockey of his career helped.
I've always liked Kulak.
Well, the thing too is, like, Kulak is now spending more time with Nurse, and those two are making an insanely good pairing for each other. Like, their numbers rival Bouchard Ekholm. And Emberson is also the team's best penalty-killing defenseman right now. Looking at the ice time, basically, when you divvy up the ice time to exactly when the penalty kill turned really good in the middle of November, Ty Emberson had the most ice time as a defender on the penalty kill. He has been the most frequently used one, and suddenly they're really good. And you watch Emberson play, he is quietly stable. He doesn't make a whole lot of dangerous plays. He's smart, he's quiet, and he just gets the job done, and it's great.
And he's got a bit of a mean streak too. Like he does. He's got some hits, he's got some fights going, so you'll love to see that.
Seems like he's not noticeable in a good way. Like, exactly. For defensemen, if you're not noticing them, it usually means like they're doing their job.
Exactly.
Which is good. And like, just a side note, like I remember when the offer sheets came down, it was like I understood them not matching on Broberg. I maybe to this day probably thought you should have matched on Holloway, but I mean, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, and I mean, you look at it and you're like, I guess he could have kept Holloway and not signed Skinner, for instance. I understand the logic why they did it. I mean, that's always a difficult one to say for sure. You look at the lineup right now, though, Holloway's then in Skinner's spot on that third line. Is he putting up the numbers he's putting up in St. Louis?
Probably not.
No. So it's for the best. I was at the game against St. Louis when they came, and the booing was coming, and I know there was debate about whether or not that was fair or whatever, and it's like, oh, they're just doing the best for them. And like, I think no Oilers fan necessarily has a lot of ill will towards them. I think we all have a soft spot for Holloway.
Yeah,
I had a soft spot for Broberg. I want to see them do well, just not against the Oilers. Good for them, but yeah, you don't get to complain about the booing when you did leave the team. But I think Podkolzin especially has come in and been a good surprise. So it's these small little moves that have actually paid off.
Well, I guess the thing is that if they signed Holloway, they probably would never have gotten Podkolzin. Because I think Podkolzin trade was right after the offer sheet, and we were kind of like, oh, it looks like they're not going to sign Holloway because they traded for Podkolzin. So with Podkolzin in that second line role, like maybe there's a spot for Holloway with Draisaitl, which that would be a pretty cool line. But ultimately, would he be performing the same under the system in Edmonton? Because it's like he hadn't quite found his game offensively in Edmonton until that point.
Yeah, and I think with Podkolzin too, he's a guy like Costin was, or a lot of guys with the change of scenery, they realize they're happy to be in a new situation, so they're willing to do more, or they're willing to change up their game, and I think that's been the case with Podkolzin. Just Holloway, if you feel the need to be that guy who is the thankless third member of that line, you watch Podkolzin, he's doing everything that's being asked of him. Right now it's okay. Right now we're not too upset about it. I'll just say that.
when the team's winning, you never really care.
No, exactly. You always hate to lose young guys, but at least we got some young guys back. And speaking of young guys, I know we got the World Juniors coming up. As an Oilers fan, I haven't cared too much about those recently. Alex, I think you might be a little more invested. And I think for once this year, actually, Oilers fans are in a good spot with the World Juniors and Flames fans aren't. Is that correct?
Yeah, the Flames only have one guy going, and it's not the player that we thought it would be. Axel Hertig. Yeah, he's on Team Sweden. They just drafted him this year. But anyway, he's going to the juniors for Sweden. And obviously the big one was Zane Parekh not being named to Team Canada, which was, I mean, when he didn't get named to the initial roster, the training camp roster, and then after he was added, I was like, there's no way he makes it. I think like they didn't want him there from the start. You can make a team of all the guys that aren't there, and it's probably better than the team they're going to ice.
Right.
Like, I don't know. I think Parekh should be there. I think he's done good enough. He was CHL Defenseman of the Year last year. Given I don't know everything about every prospect, but I look at their blue line and I don't see a clear-cut quarterback for the power play in a way that Parekh could have been. Even a Carter Yakimchuk. I think it's to bring him there for a week after not naming him and then make it like you're done. To me, there wasn't even a point. I feel bad for him because some people look at him as the best defenseman in the 2024 draft class because of how well he played and what he did for Saginaw in the Memorial Cup and then even in the regular season and playoffs. He, again, would have been probably a perfect quarterback for that power play, but it's not even just the Parekh side of things. I mean, I think there were a lot of snubs, like Seneca, Andrew Crystal, Riley Height, Michael Misa not even getting an invite, like to me is nuts when he's second in CHL scoring and he's in his draft year. And the only other guy that's ahead of him is Gavin McKenna, who's in his D-2 year. Like it's crazy, or his D-1 year, I should say. Like it's crazy. They're just trying to galaxy brain this team. And I don't understand. Like you don't want to bring Parekh. That's one thing. At least bring one of these offensive right-handed defensemen. It's in Ottawa. You could have brought Yakimchuk despite what you think of him. But to me, their right side isn't that strong, and Parekh could have easily been their team's best defenseman. Never mind just their quarterback. It's crazy to me.
Yeah, like I get why they did when you've got a prospect of the caliber of Bo Akey who can play in that role. So I can totally understand why they wouldn't bring Parekh in when you've got that. Just an abundance of riches. Like it's crazy. So. But.
Like, it was the same thing last year where like they left off so many guys last year where it's like, what are you doing?
Like, the selection committee's been galaxy braining the team for years, and it's never working. And
the team last year was so boring and not.
It's
fun.
exactly it. They were boring. I'm pretty sure they did really poorly in the tournament too last year.
They finished fifth, I want to say,
which is quite a disaster result for Team Canada and the juniors. And it's like you kind of want to reevaluate the selection committee and say like, hey, the game of hockey is changing and is focusing on this speed and offense and skill and talent. And Hockey Canada's selection is like back in 2005. They're trying to like bring these like big, less skilled, like more grindy players to a juniors tournament.
It's always this case in these best on best tournaments where I think we even heard it for the Four Nations where someone, I can't remember if it was the coach or the GM for Canada, said we're not necessarily making an all-star team. And I think about it, and I'm like, these are the best hockey players in the world. If you tell these extremely good hockey players to play defense, to play for your country, these guys will do it. Like every time Canada or any team tries to galaxy brain it, you get the 98 Nagano Olympics, you get 2006 turn, you get the World Juniors for the last 2-3 years. Like it's also why Team Canada is having issues with our depth anywhere with our young junior prospects and why we're falling behind the US is there's this idea that you have to have a system and you have to have these specific roles to win. And it's the only reason why that's the case in the NHL is because of the salary cap, let's be honest, like that you have to have specializations. Otherwise, you want guys who are well-rounded, sure, but the best hockey players are the best hockey players. Like, I don't understand it, but again, I'm not up there, so it's easy for me to say that, but I have as many Team Canada rosters that won a medal last year as the World Junior team did, so.
Yeah, this tournament is never about defense and goaltending. The goaltending across the board, take away maybe that 1 year of Spencer Knight in the COVID kind of bubble one. If you score a lot of goals, you're going to win. Look at the 2023 team with like it was Bedard, Gunther, right? Those guys just filled the net. Like what Bedard finished with like almost 30 points in like 7 games. It's like put together the team that's going to score the most goals, and maybe don't make Dave Cameron your coach. Like, why is Luca Pinelli there? Seriously, like it's stuff like that pisses me off. And it's like, and I'm not even saying just from the Perec side of things. But like Andrew Crystal has like 50 points in like 20 games or something. You're telling me that guy couldn't make the team? He could have filled the net for like how much more does he have to do in junior to get a nod? Because this is 2 years in a row now that he's been cut. Then there's also like, I guarantee you Gavin McKenna starts at the 13th forward because he's 16. Bedard started as the 13th, which was like, and then I think his first game he had like 4 goals. It was the year that they cut the tournament short when it was like they played like 2 games. Bedard had like 8 points.
Yeah.
13th forward,
exactly.
guys. 13th forward. It's incredible how like
it's just a
these
very
guys don't learn.
old school mentality, and it doesn't seem to be matching the way the game's headed, and it's not working very well for them. And it's not
crazy.
working well for us either to watch it, because it's, instead of watching the best young players in Canada, we're watching like we're watching what they want to put together as like a roster for an 82 game season. This is like a 6 game,
100%.
you know, it's a 6 game best on best style tournament. Like,
That is just
send the
chaos
best
as
players.
well.
Yeah.
Systems don't
absolute
win these
chaos.
tournaments.
No, and like
Yeah.
at the end of the day, they're kids, right? Like you're not expecting these guys to be playing like unbelievable defense. It's like, you know, the games are going to be high scoring. You know, they're going to be high paced. Just adapt. I don't think it's that hard. Maybe it is. I don't know. I'll never be a coach in that, or I'll never be on the selection committee. I think when you have rosters being put together of the guys who were cut, and you're like, damn, like this roster could have probably competed. When that initial roster came out, like the selection camp, I'm like, what is happening? I'm pretty sure we've spoke about it, but it's like Seneca is the first 3rd overall pick to not make the team since like 1997.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been unbelievable this year. You tell me that kid couldn't have like,
And
that kid couldn't have made your team.
He didn't even make the selection camp.
Yeah, he was only there because
until
of an
the
injury. Like, and the same with Perec. Like Perec had almost 100 points last year in the regular season. No, you're not good enough. Like, come on. Crazy. Like I said, Dave Cameron, maybe stop making him your head coach, because their power play is going to stink too. Like when he was the power play coach in Calgary, oh my God, that guy was horrendous. This power play, like, because he was the coach in the summer World Junior Tournament 2 years ago in 2022. Yeah. And oh my God, their power play was horrendous. I remember sitting there watching the gold medal game against Finland. I'm like, what are you guys doing? And again, maybe it's just chemistry. I was like, that's a Dave Cameron power play. It's not good.
So we could be in for a great tournament again, is what you're saying.
Yeah, like I'll still watch it. Like the World Juniors to me is always something that I love sitting down and watching no matter what. I think this year I was a little more excited because I'm like, oh, the Flames are going to have this really good prospect playing in the tournament. And like I don't remember the last time the Flames had a unreal prospect playing in the World Juniors. I want to say it was Adam Fox, and he never even played the game for the team. Like, I think that was the last like blue chipper they had where it's like, wow, this guy might be really good. Because Kachuk was there, but he wasn't drafted yet. Tyler Parsons was a prospect for them back. He was States guy, but they haven't really had a top level guy. Like maybe you could take Honzik last year, but I don't necessarily put Honzik in that realm of a Zane Perec or like some of the guys I mentioned. I was excited for that, but I guess now it's just we're going to have to wait till he's in the NHL to see what he's made of.
It's very unfortunate, but I guess it is what it is in that situation.
Yeah.
I think the funny thing too is, you're going back to the Broberg offer sheet. The Oilers actually got Paul Fisher, and I can't remember if he made the team, but he definitely made the selection roster for Team USA. So
which
we've
was
got
kind of a
defensemen.
surprise. That came out of nowhere. I wasn't expecting anything out of this random, what looked like a throwaway prospect. And he's apparently good enough to make Team USA's junior teams. Like, okay, cool. Maybe he could turn into something good.
And it's kind of like it's kind of funny, just back on the Team Canada side of things, like they're still favored to win with the roster they brought, which, I mean, if they win, great. But I don't know. I'm salty, clearly. Just a little bit. I don't know. I was excited to watch Zane because I don't get to watch a lot of OHL games, and I all the highlights I see, I'm like, oh my God, like this kid is so good.
Yeah, like I said, we got Fisher and Akey, and I mean, the Oilers, our prospect depth is obviously not great. I mean, Savoy, that's a great way to replenish that. Akey is, I think, our top defensive prospect. I would say he's a right-handed, fairly offensive defenseman, which is always good to have in the pipeline. Maybe down the future, he makes a great partner with Nurse. But, I think a lot of Oilers fans, we're happy to see Akey there. We're going to go watch now. It'll be fun. But
Oh, yeah. I mean,
I
I
can't
was
imagine.
so surprised to see, one, that he even made the selection team, and two, that he made the team. Because, like you said, Oilers, we have not had the prospect pool for years, so it's very rare that we have anybody going to that tournament, especially on Team Canada. So now we got someone to watch.
Yeah, and I mean, I know that from talking to people who do follow prospects, like everyone's really high on Akey. When we drafted him, a lot of people said that was a very astute pick. I'm not necessarily surprised that he made it in that sense, but yeah, like with some of the other prospects. And I know as a Oilers fan from back in the day, when you have a lot of prospects who you think should make it, and then they don't, it's really annoying. And like Alex, I think you're totally right. And yeah, it's coming from a personal space, sure, but still, these guys pretty well. So Parekh better than we know Akey. So I can see why that's doing a little bit more for sure.
And it's not even just me saying it. It's when you have everybody being like, I can't believe this kid didn't make the team. It's like, yeah, maybe he's good. I think the one knock against him is he's very confident. I think people are saying that he's got a bit of an ego, but I mean, like when you're that good, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. It's just another chip on his shoulder that he's going to have kind of moving forward, like whenever he makes the Flames roster and, kind of be like, all right, like, look how good I am now, whatever, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. So I think it's just another thing that it'll motivate him maybe even more, because I think even after like the selection camp rosters came out and he wasn't on it, he went on a ridiculous heater. He was just scoring like, I think he's up to 10 or 11 goals now, and he's on pace, I think, for 90 points again. So
yeah, he's at 10 goals and 35 points in 26 games right now. So
it's pretty good.
And Seneke, who had like that ridiculously nice goal as well,
on Sam Dickinson, who is going to be the team's number one defenseman.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, and like on Seneca, like he had a great camp from all reports and everything I read. He had a great camp. It's just didn't make the team. Which is nuts. So guess we'll see.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. I mean, we're coming up on that time. I guess we're 11 days away from now to that tournament. Yeah. So looking forward to World Juniors. But obviously that comes the day after Christmas. And I know we're all writing our list. We're having Santa check it twice. So I'm going to ask you guys both, what's one wish that you have on your wish list for your team? And we're going to call it the Krampus wish for the other team. What do you want that's maybe not the nicest thing that they get this holiday season? So Shauna, we'll kick it off with you here.
Sounds good. So for the Oilers, I think the one thing that I wish will happen into the new year is a more consistent Stuart Skinner, that he can find that consistency in his game, because he's either really, really good or really, really bad. And the swings between the two are just wild. So what I really want to see from him is the ability to find some consistency so that he can either, hover more in the middle sometimes rather than completely falling off the rails, or even if he can find consistency when he's like one of the best goalies in the league. That would be amazing too. But just some level of consistency so that he can really just establish a name for himself as a top goalie in the league and just build some confidence in the fan base, so he can get the recognition he deserves for the quality of play that he can provide so often, and for what he's done in numerous occasions over the last season and a half that he's been the guy for Edmonton. And I think for the Flames, for the Krampus wish, whatever convoluted situation they have with their draft picks, just nothing in the top 10, nothing in the top 15, as low as possible in the first round. Whatever happens in the season, like they can finish wherever, just as long as they don't have a pick in the first 10, first 15.
I like that one.
Could happen.
Alex, what do you want for your Flames, and what do you want for our Oilers?
For the Flames, more 4-goal games in regulation. They've only scored 4 goals in regulation once since October. The last time it was against Edmonton, that 4-1 win. And then they didn't score 4 until last week against the Predators. So more 4-goal games would be nice because the games have been, unfortunately, a little bit boring this year. That game against Nashville was quite fun because they were scoring. So more goals would be phenomenal. I think it would just, even if they lose, like if they can lose like 6-4, games would just be a lot of fun to watch and a lot of goals. So I'll go with just more 4-goal games and maybe an injury to the Four Nations team to get Mackenzie Weegar in there. I had to shout him out. For the Krampus list, I had to put Weegar in here at some point.
Yeah,
Shout out Mackenzie Weegar, 500th game last night. You're the man. Love that guy. For the Krampus list, obviously the Oilers went on that 16-game heater last season. I'm hoping for a 16-game losing streak. That would be great. I would love a 16-game losing streak for Edmonton. It would make me very happy to watch. If I have to watch the Flames lose, at least I can watch the Oilers lose too. Not that I expect it to happen. I think it's maybe a little more realistic that they go on a 16-game win streak again. But hey, you never know. Hockey is a weird sport.
I mean, if they go on that 16-game losing streak, then maybe mine and Sean comments on loving Knoblauch go out the window at that
We're going to have to delete this episode if that happens.
I never said anything. I've always been against him.
Exactly.
He's always stung. Get this guy out of here. Hire Daryl Sutter. Go tighten them up. God, I miss Daryl. I know everyone's gonna blast me for that. I miss Daryl. He's great.
If I can make a Krampus wish for Alex specifically, I hope it's that the Flames decide to hire Dave Cameron as their coach.
Oh God, I thought you were going to say
long-term.
I thought you were going to say they trade Mackenzie Weegar. Oh God,
no, my wish for you is that somehow you and Mackenzie Weegar become best friends without him having to get a restraining order against you.
I met him last year. I wonder if he remembers me. It's probably the only I was probably the only person in that rink outside of his family wearing a Weegar jersey, and his mom noticed me, so it was pretty cool. So
it's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, he's the best.
It's like there's this long lost relative that I don't recognize.
Yeah, I was walking in the concourse, and his whole family's there, and you just see me. And they were like, "I love your jersey," and I'm like, "Thanks." Like, "Do you want to meet Mackenzie?" And I'm like, "What?"
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm like, "Absolutely." And my friends were like dying because they're like, "Of course this would happen to you." So, he's the best. Love that guy.
Well, thanks so much, you guys, for stepping in for Josh. He had some big shoes to fill, and obviously come anytime again, especially the next episode where we can all watch Josh have to pay the piper.
Poor Josh.
But yeah, and to everyone listening, thanks so much for listening again, and we'll see you in the new year. Like and subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts, and yeah, see you in a few weeks.